Welcome to BlockPreneurs' second season. On our first episode, we're so excited to announce that Swiss Blockchain is expanding its operation by opening a new office in Singapore. So now we're going to be in Geneva, in Dubai, and in Singapore. Singapore is a leading hub when it comes to Web3 technologies. We're also excited to announce that we will be rolling out our first blockchain product out of Swiss Blockchain, which was developed by our very own student. Please follow us on Instagram at Swiss Blockchain to stay tuned and find out more about that. As for our first episode guest, it is going to be Lisa J.Y. Tan, who's a very exciting character, and she has a lot of knowledge to impart on you throughout this episode. She's the founder of Economics Design and Orus, both of which are companies established within the Web3 industry. She's also the author of Economics and Math, of Token Engineering and DeFi. That is a book I highly recommend for you to check out. For now, joining us virtually is Lisa. So I actually want to start with something that I've heard. I've basically read a lot of what you have written on your personal blog, and I've read a lot on the things you have put out throughout your different businesses as well. So I want to start with a value that you have said that you have, which is to build a better future for tomorrow. And I know that blockchain technology is a very new industry. Maybe it didn't start yesterday. It might have started 10 years ago, but relative to the bigger scheme of things, it's still quite new and it still hasn't matured to its peak yet. So we're still growing. And what I'm curious to understand about you is you have built already a lot as it is. You founded 2 different companies, which we will talk about within this podcast, and you have achieved a lot more than so many people out there. So I want to understand, where was your starting point with the Web3 technology and with blockchain? Where was your aha moment? When did it click for you, and when did you realize that blockchain technology is the industry you want to prosper in?
That's a very good question. And I'll be honest with you, I came in not believing in blockchain at all. In fact, I came in arguing with people. And with new technologies, there's a lot of scams out there, which is fine, which is completely normal. The thing is, my background is in economics. And to me, economics rules my life. Even if I go grocery shopping, I actually take 2 different things. I look at the economic cost. I look at the utility it could give me, depending on what I want to cook for dinner. And then I make a choice that way. So economics rules my life a lot. So back then in 2017, 2018, even up to 2019, a lot of people were using economic theories, and they just put some random theories in there and say, you should invest all your money in my project because I have the best white paper ever, and we have like economic background, and we have this economic formula in place, you should trust us. And the more I read into it, the more it didn't make sense to me. So I started arguing with people online. I started arguing, you can only write so many tweets. And then I started to move to LinkedIn, and I keep reaching max of the limits, and I keep writing a lot of comments. And then in the end, I started to make videos because my friends and families, they told me, Lisa, nobody cares about this. Go make YouTube because someone will care about this. I don't care about this. I can't listen to this anymore. So I thought, fine, maybe if I start talking about this from explain why people are wrong, explain how they should approach this, explain what are the first principles they can think about to start understanding how to build proper economics in Web3, that will be very interesting. So I started that way. And the more I started talking about it, turns out people are actually interested. To give you some context, back in 2017, even up to 2018, when people talk about economics in Web3, they only think about 2 things. The first one, it's just a marketing thing. You just need tokens and then you just pump the tokens up and it's just all marketing. The second one is, it's just DCF. One of the finance bros will come and tell me, it's just DCF.
For sure.
Not so much into it. It's just DCF and then you get the number and then that's how we invest. Like, I get that, but before we go into that phase, we need to design these economies. We need to understand, why do you have tokens? Where does the utility come in? Where's the intrinsic value it holds? Then you can have extrinsic value, which is market value. All these different components. And it just went over the heads. And I figured, no, this cannot be it. I see a value in this. This is a fantastic technology. As I started arguing with people, I started to realize this technology is fantastic. It can change the social fabric of what tomorrow looks like. The thing is, we have the tool in place. We need to use the tool correctly to build something real. We're not using the tool to make all the mistakes that we have in Web 2, make it more efficient in Web 3, with execution.
Of course.
And how do we make it better? And so I came with that, did a lot of research, wrote paper, wrote book, the book that you have on your table. And then it started evolving until where we are today.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way to come into it, for sure. All the roads lead to Rome. It doesn't matter how you get there. It just matters that you eventually come there.
Reach to it, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what kind of questions you ask. Is it the question against the topic, or is it with the topic? It's about keeping your curiosity going and chasing that answer. So honestly, it's quite interesting.
True. You said something very important that, like, I think a lot of people need to understand when coming to Web3. Like, you took the economics, the first principle of economics, and you came into the Web3 and you're like, it's still valid, but then there's new variables to apply to. It's a new different thinking. We need to see it in a different way from what we've applied into Web 2 or even traditional economics. We're heading towards a different economies setup. I remember you putting it now, we're moving on what we call digital economies that are more toward governance, self-selecting. So that required us to look into a different perspective of economics in these new economies that we're moving ahead to. And many people are scared to go there. What you do greatly is education. You have a lot of resources online for people to look at. You've written a great book about how we see Web3 technologies, how we see decentralized networks specifically, and apply economies to them. So what would you tell people about learning about this technology, that they shouldn't fear it? Like, a lot of people, especially now with AI, they're scared they're losing their jobs. So what's the way forward with these technologies? Should we just reject it and fight that it's wrong? Or should we go and learn about it and see that, no, it's a useful tool that we can apply?
Yeah, very, very good points. I'll break this down to 3 components. The first one is first principles don't change. I'll dive into that a bit later. The second is distribution is not anything new. Blockchain is just one of the applications of distributed network, but this has been around for ages. In computer science, there's a whole field into it. We'll talk about that. And then the third one is, what does the future look like? So I'll dive into the first one first, which is the first principles don't change. The thing about economics, and going back to first principles that Nora, you mentioned as well, is that I believe in first principles. The application that we use is different, but the foundations don't change. What does it mean? When I wrote the book and when I began in this field, nobody cared about what token economics was. And nobody really cared about what economy design is. To them, it's just, it's just some random stuff you put together and then you just create an Excel sheet and out you go. But there's actually a lot of art and design thinking and economic principles added into it. The way I approached this was not, what kind of tech is there? What kind of solutions do we have? We go find problems to solve. Mm-hmm. On the contrary, I went back to the late 1800s. I spent 2 years doing research back then to the late 1800s, where economics was still a philosophy. Mm-hmm. And that was the foundation of economics, applying them. And then the difference in Web 2 versus Web 3 is that Web 3 is about distribution and it's about coordination and collaboration with people. So how do you get assets to start coordinating with people? It's not just Google say something, Amazon say something, Facebook say something, we all have to follow. There's no terms and conditions that we need to agree to. If there is no such hard-coded laws, what are these soft laws in place, which are all these incentives and coordination and collaboration that we can build to start building things? So people don't have to be too worried about this change in tech, because it's not very different from what we have today. We just build on a different tech stack, but the first principles don't change. So then we move to the next point, which is, yes, things have not changed, but there is still some changes in place. What is the tech that has not changed? The thing is, distributed technology is not anything new. There are a lot of other computer scientists not in distributed tech, or not in blockchain, but working on distributed tech for ages. In fact, I was listening to a software engineering podcast yesterday, talking about a new domain-specific language, talking about, it's called TLA+, and Amazon S3 uses it, for example, to really balance between its distributed hardware providers and servers to balance between the uptime, downtime of all these cloud providers. And that is distributed. It is centralized, as in Amazon owns all of them, But as a system, as a network, it is distributed, and we have huge computer science research poured into that for ages. So don't be too worried about the tech, because the tech is not different. It's just that instead of Amazon owning all the cloud, now you and I can own the cloud, and it's a little bit more fair, a little bit more distributed. That's actually very exciting. Then the third point is, okay, with AI coming in, with blockchain changing so much, you have L1, L2, AppPace, now we have L3, we have DeepIn AI, we have all these tools out there. What does it mean for me, for a random person on the street? I think we're in the cusp of change in a very good way. There's no better time to be alive than now. It's almost like we figure out how to create wheels for the first time. Instead of getting like a donkey carry all your stuff, or we have to drag things along, we found wheels to make things more efficient. What does it mean? It means that people who used to be carrying stuff, now they don't need to be carrying stuff. We can use the wheels to transport things. Their form, their work, their value that they provide will keep evolving, will keep changing. Just like when we started agriculture, when we started the internet, things are going to change, and we just have to keep up with it. We keep upskilling ourselves. The good thing is, now with tech, it's so easy to learn, so easy to just dive into a brand new topic, and you can learn so much. You can explore a lot of new fields that's not found yet, and go find out where your passion lies and how do you contribute to a better tomorrow. And I think that's super exciting.
It is.
I think you say two great things. One is, with the technology we have now, what's different is now I can own it, you can own it, Moza can own it, anyone can own it, which is something different, was not possible before, but this is the upgrade of the technology we're at. And the other thing that you say toward, like when you've ended, is find your passion in this technology. And this is something we promote a lot when it comes to learning about blockchain technology. You don't just have to apply it to Bitcoin. There are like so many industries that you can apply this distributed technology to. Find where your passion is, and then go and build something that can benefit the world, make it a better place, and also benefits you on a personal level. Because again, this technology is becoming in a way like a public good, but it's also giving more freedom to the people. And I think it's really, really, really great to learn and dive into.
Yeah. And speaking of public goods, we have systems like, for example, the Ethereum blockchain, which is decentralized and it's public and it's open for everyone out there. So in your opinion, like, how do you think a system like Ethereum, which is open, serving as a public good, able to generate an income, generate money within itself and keep itself sustainable and alive and constantly growing?
Yeah, very good question. I think when we go back to public goods again, it's very important that these public goods or these knowledge goods are equally shared by everyone. That instead of universal basic income, we have like a universal basic knowledge where everyone has a level of knowledge stack that you can tap into. And so public goods are very important in this case in building what tomorrow looks like. Then going back to what does revenue stream or business model looks like for these? Public goods are quite similar to, if I want to compare business model to business model, very similar to open source tech. Things like your Linux. Linux is tech that, all the engineers that I know, they use Linux software and Linux operating system because it's just a fantastic tool. You can customize so much. That being said, there is Red Hat that does the commercialization part of it. So just because it's public good, number one, just because public good doesn't mean that there's no revenue models out of it. So maybe there's upstream or downstream that you can commercialize, which I've seen a lot of projects doing. The second one is public goods can remain public goods, and then you make money based on tools that or tech that's built on top of it. So for example, emails are free. And like Google gives you emails for free. And there is TCP/IP as the protocol. Ethereum is a protocol, but TCP/IP is a protocol to help improve communication. And then you build other business models on top of it, like integrating to Google Calendar, selling ads, the entire Google suite of knowledge. So just because it's a public good doesn't mean that you should just look at the business model and revenue stream as, oh, this is public good and everything is free. But there are other ways to make money. And there's nothing wrong with making money, by the way. You're providing value, and you can get returns of the value that you're providing, different market value back into your company. Unless you want to build a non-profit, and that's also fine.
Yeah. Yeah, there are different ways to kind of approach this for sure.
True. Let's delve more deeper into your speciality, which is talking economics, or like say designing economies for the digital ecosystem. And I'm not sure how you started economics design. What's pushed you to do it? Was it like the education side of it that end up building a great consultancy business such as economics design, and like how you took these concepts of economics and then built them and tailored them to be applied to the Web3, coming with economics design. So there's two elements of the question. What's that principle that you're like, if you can explain it for people who hear it for the first time, and then how even that led you to establishing economics design?
Yes. So the thing is, economics design was not like top option that I wanted to do, although being very entrepreneurial. My first goal was actually I wanted to do a PhD in this field. So I wrote a research, and that was basically the teaser to the book that you have on the table, really understanding if we're going to build brand new economies of tomorrow, because we have the tech to do that, we build brand new countries, for example, what does that look like? How do we get started? Is there a framework or a model that we can approach? So that's how I began. If we can build a better tomorrow, given all the tools and resources we have, how can we begin building? What kind of framework or canvas can we begin with? So I started with that, wrote a paper, and the paper was published in 2018. And then I started going, and I was reading a lot of researchers back then. I had a list of like 30 or 45 researchers that I knew were diving into this field, not exactly token economics, but very similar fields like monetary theory. I read a lot of legal papers, a lot of international monetary exchange, macro and microeconomics, and these were professors that I knew I could get them to mentor me in the Web3 space. So started to apply to these different universities for PhD. In fact, I knew a few who are deans of universities, and I just emailed them, or just had a copy of them. I want to do this field. What do you think about it? Back then, nobody cared about crypto. Like crypto was not something that the academic space took seriously. Everything that came back to me was, crypto's a scam, right?
Yeah. Typical.
Crypto seriously. You want to do a PhD in crypto? Nobody is going to care about you. Do not. If you want to do a PhD, you have to do traditional economics or traditional finance. If you want to publish any paper in crypto, don't publish under the university's name. You need to do this as a side hobby, as a secret. You have to do it under your blanket, because
it's a hostage situation.
Okay, thank you. I hear your feedback, and I get what you're doing, but that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in using everything that I've built to start applying it into reality. The reason I wanted to do a PhD was because back then I think the idea was not fully formed yet. I needed a lot more data, a lot more practitioner knowledge, but there wasn't enough data out there. So I wanted to do research. Then I thought, you know what? Maybe let's just go into the practitioner space. Let's just apply this, get feedback, get data, get results, and we keep improving from that. And lo and behold, it's been 7 years.
Wow. Nice. I admire your commitment to this, because a lot of people in your situation
might give up.
Yeah, they would just give up, because imagine like a university which carries a lot of name, a lot of weight, because educational systems and universities in the end of the day have set the tone for a very long period of time. So for them to reject the idea and for you to stand your ground and go like, no, this is what I want to do and this is what I'm going to stick out to and take it all the way, I admire that. It might have been not the end game, but it's definitely a stepping stone towards what came next, which is kind of like what I wanted to ask about, which is your the other project that you have founded, which is Orus. And I've looked into it, and it's a very impressive concept, to be honest. Not something I have seen personally done before. From what I understood is that it's a tool to help people establish better decisions or have a better decision making in terms of what they want to invest in when it comes to, and tell me if I'm wrong, but when it comes to investing in crypto projects, or does it extend beyond that? So I just want you to give us like a broad overview of Orus and its role as a decision making engine in the Web3 industry.
Very good point. So the focus is not primarily investment, but it's really to help protocols make good decisions. Okay. And how do you increase long-term value growth? So to give you some context, everything we talked about designing economy is really phase one. So how do you take academic theories? How do you take all these different concepts that's being built, and how do we apply them and build this brand new country, brand new world, brand new protocol, brand new ecosystem?
Mm-hmm.
Then once you go live, the reality is that real life is very different from models.
Yeah.
Because if real life is the same as models, all economists are very rich. But every economist that I know, they have no money. So there is a mismatch in models and reality. But it's still important to build all these models. It's still important to build all these simulations to really stress test and understand your tail end risks. So it's all part of risk management. That being said, once projects are live, getting user feedback and improving the economic models to improve the incentives to understand how user behave is going to be very important. And so I needed a tool to understand that once projects are live, how are the incentives, which token incentive, driving user behavior? Is it working? Is it correlated? Or is it just happen to something move and the behavior of token prices move as well? Is there direct correlation that we can look at? So when prices go down or when business model is not doing very well, there are other ways that we can help the business to keep growing and to keep creating long-term value. Whether token prices increase or not is secondary, but how do we keep creating long-term value in the protocol once it's live? Because we are beyond modeling stage, we're beyond simulations, beyond theory. And so I needed a tool to do that. And well, I spoke to a lot of people. Nobody wants to make this tool because it's too complicated. And I said, okay, fine. I'll do it instead.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not gonna, if no one's gonna do it for you, you might as well do it yourself. Yeah. Honestly, like you've mentioned that it helps protocols, and I know that a lot of our listeners who are tuning into this podcast are either people who are curious to get into the blockchain industry and have very limited knowledge. So can you just expand a bit more on that concept? So what do you mean when you say that it's there to help build better protocols?
Yes, very good question. So I'll divide it into two components. The first one is once projects are live, tokens are related not just the business model or these data. It's not just on-chain data. It's not just token prices, but business model and revenue stream. So understanding how that all comes together is going to be very important. Things like user acquisition, user retention, average revenue per user. How does that coincide with the business model and token prices? For example, we are looking at how do I maintain token prices or how do I increase token prices based on the intrinsic value of the business. That means if the business grows, the perceived value of this protocol increases. That's why token prices increase. There's no direct correlation, otherwise it becomes insecurity. But how do we make sure that the intrinsic value of the system keeps growing? So that's key. How do we do that? Then we can use data to understand how can we measure the intrinsic value of the system growing. Not only that, we can look at different correlations between what people perceive as value and the token prices. For example, if let's say you are a DEX and there is the protocol revenue divided by TVL, for example, could be a leading indicator to token price. When that ratio, and this is a random thing, I have not validated that yet. But for example, if the ratio falls, like the protocol fee divided by TVL ratio falls, in 7 days' time, the token prices fall. So from there, we can just do a very quick correlation to understand, okay, so the perceived value of this exchange is dependent on protocol fees and TVL. So this is the business model that I need to grow. This is the business model that I need to focus on. It's not just marketing. It's not just marketing campaigns and some airdrop campaigns. But how do I keep growing the TVL and keep growing the protocol fees so that the perceived value increases and the intrinsic value people attach to the protocol, hence the token, increases. So these are examples of this. This is one example of something is very important. The second is benchmark. So let's say you're a new protocol going to market, and how do you benchmark against your competitors? And today with crypto, one of the fun things is that you don't need. It's almost like Google Analytics is available for everyone. I can go and see my competitors' analytics, see who's using my competitors, and then how can I vampire attack them over, or understand what are their business drivers, and then I can validate if those are my business drivers that increases the intrinsic value, that increases token prices. So I think data is going to be a very important thing in the next phase or
Yeah.
the next bull run. And I think people are taking it a lot more seriously now.
Yeah.
You mentioned a great point, is that when when you're speaking about Orus, you're just speaking about data in general. When people are just used to, like, when they come into a certain business model, they'll just look at, for example, like PNL, like, okay, how much if I can just reduce my cost, and then, okay, that's how I can increase my revenue. There are like no other ways that they look into how they can shape their business model. And again, I think it's, if we combine Oris and when we speak about like economics in decentralized system, the variables we have, that's what you call them, or like the incentives that I can put, is no longer like limited to, for example, financials. There are other ways to look into things, and we actually have the tools, whether be it like how we design decentralized system, or how now with Orus, which you're complementing decentralized system to help you use these other variables to build in new business models for the business. I see thumbs up, so the concept of Orus, well.
I think a very important thing is that a lot of the tools that we have now, which are fantastic tools, are focusing on the computer science of things, which is very important. I told you, decentralization is not new. Distribution is not new. There's a lot of Python codes or even like C++ codes and simulation devices really helping to understand how do I optimize the distributed network side of things. And that's a very important aspect, because here we're talking about rational agents. Computers are computers. They look at which gives me the best payout, and I execute, or I do whatever the machine asks me to do. What I'm adding is something on top of it, which is the human side of things. That's why it's economics, not computer science. Economics, same thing. It's all distributed. Humans are distributed. Humans' preferences are distributed. But humans are not always rational beings. In fact, they are the least rational beings in the entire world. How do we understand and how do we build systems for such irrational beings, irrational behavior? And similar to computer science that we have distributed networks, now the agents we're talking about are not rational. So how do we build almost like irrational distributed networks, and how do we optimize for that? And optimization does not always mean money. Optimization can be in terms of, depending on the different kind of business models, right? Can be climate change, can be education, can be social good, can be public goods. So optimization is no longer, from a computer science perspective, the highest server uptime, for example. But we're changing the framework of what optimization looks like and what the goals look like. And we need better tools, a different kind of tools to get there, which I think is very important in building a better future for tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. I think the thing is, with these kind of technologies and these kind of steps forward, there's a lot of abstract thinking that needs to take place. So you kind of have to take a very macro overview of things, and then kind of decide where to go next with that. So it's kind of tough. I understand why it can be tough for people to kind of grasp these concepts and work with them, and then also like come up with a product on top of all of that, because it's a bit abstract, and then you go down from there. So yeah, it's quite interesting, to be honest. The thing that I wanted to address as well is because so basically Web3 entails like blockchain, it entails AI, it entails Internet of Things. And I've seen that you envision integrating AI into the Orus tool. Yeah, so I just wanted to ask you, how do you envision AI changing the way Orus operates? Because I think a lot of people look at AI as a technology in itself, and then look at blockchain as another foreign planet, to be honest, at this point. So I just want to see how do you envision these two technologies working together?
Yes, very good question. So I see blockchain as a foundational tool, almost like if we talk about physical space, blockchain is like land. We need land to build anything. So blockchain is like a part of the tech stack. It's server. You can do centralized and decentralized. Decentralized is always much better, and that is like the base tech. AI comes in to help either make processes better, or do different kind of automation or help with the last mile, which is interaction with different kind of systems. So the way I was looking at AI and the way we're playing around with AI is really using AI to help explain these abstract concepts to people a lot easier. So as you mentioned just now, Muzal, you mentioned that these are very abstract concepts and not everyone understands it intuitively, which is fine, right? This is really difficult. But if we can start helping people to understand things better and also educating people. So understanding is one. How do we explain all these, build into smart contracts, execute them in, and do TG and execute them? That's one. The other one is also on the community side of things. Now people are giving a lot more agency. They can decide where they want to go. If let's say I have $100, do I want to join protocol A or protocol B? And do I want to spend my time on protocol A or protocol B? Because there's so many options on the table. And once you have tools available to help you make informed decisions, because maybe you care about returns on your tokens, but you also care about climate. And maybe protocol B is better, but there are a lot of questions that you need to ask, a lot of data you want to validate. Instead of doing your own research, you don't have, and you don't know where to get started, then there are tools to help you and help you to understand these systems better for you to make informed decisions. So on the protocol side of things, helps to make better informed decisions by turning abstract ideas into something a bit more tangible that they can execute on. And on the user side of things, is to help them make decisions on which protocol they should spend time on, which one is aligned to their principles, because I think that's going to be very important.
Yep. I want to jump into something that's a bit out of this topic, but I've honestly been dying to ask you about this. So basically, I watched one of your videos where you were talking about systems, and I at least to me, it might have sounded a bit unconventional, but you used the words like motivation is useless. So you were talking about, basically. So you were talking about how it's not about motivation when you want to go out there and build those kind of projects. It's about the systems that you have built around you. And I found that concept very intriguing because honestly, I relate to it a lot because I hate it when someone tells me like you need to be motivated to keep going, because to me it's like I can't keep being motivated. It's just I'm human. I'm gonna burn out at some point. And then I find myself still at the end of the day opening my laptop, looking at that piece of code that's been haunting me for like a few weeks and still going at it despite the fact that I am in no way motivated to do this, but there is like a greater thing that's moving me forward. And when you explained it that way, it felt like, I think that's what I've been doing without actually realizing it. So I really want our listeners to kind of get a piece of that cake, to be honest. Yeah.
Yes. I talk about that. It's been a year since I talked about that. And basically it was a lot of people asking me like, how do you do what you do? Because there's like a bunch of things I need to do every single day. And I don't rely on motivation, because motivation is like something you feel very good about and then you go and do it. But sometimes the reality is that sometimes it's shit and you still have to do it.
Yeah.
Because that's just life. It's not rainbows and sunshines every day.
Yeah.
But how do you go and do it? You can't rely on this feel good vibe that you get, or good vibes, and drink some matcha tea and then, I'm so excited to go and do something. Because you can't rely on that. It will not always be there for you.
Yeah.
What I've done instead is to build systems. Systems are made, some people call it routines, some people call it structure. And to me, it's different kind of systems that I can just tap into to go and get things done. So it's something that I can always rely on, because there's some days that you just don't feel good. But you know that once you go into like a specific headspace or you go into a specific environment, you just get going. And I do have the hard systems in place. So like different automations, different tools. I use Notion to guide my entire life. And there are a lot of different like tables and linking everything to each other to keep me updated on what needs to be done. At the same time, I also do a lot of the soft side of things. For example, there are two things that I do. So this comes from Pavlov's dogs. Do you know this scientist called Pavlov?
I have not heard of him, but
yeah. So you guys know. And what he does is basically before the dogs eat, he just rings the bell and the dogs will salivate before they eat. And so he kept doing it just that so that when he rings the bell, the dogs just salivate.
Yeah.
And so I thought this is a fantastic system. If I don't feel good, and there are many days that I don't feel good and I don't want to work, how can I top load myself
Mm-hmm.
to, instead of salivating, want to go and do work? There are two things I've done that works for me. I don't know if it works for other people. The first one is I listen to Canon and D. For some reason, I've trained myself like an animal. Train myself every time before I work. I listen to Canon and D. I've been doing this for 15 years.
Oh,
Every time I listen to that, I just want to work. The
mhm.
second is I do have a timer in place, like a Pomodoro timer. And once I click the timer, I just want to work. And then I know when to stop and have breaks and celebrate wins, because I think celebrating wins is also a good part of the system. And then
Yeah.
you just go into that. And it can be quite boring, but you know what? Sometimes life is kind of boring. As long as it works, it's not
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah, no, true.
I'll take that with me for sure.
Actually, it's like, and it's amazing how the human brain is, once you train them to something, no matter what is it that you train it to, it will just work in that respect. But you also need to find what works for you, because every person's brain is different from
Yeah, we
the
tick
other.
in different ways. The thing I want to also talk about on this podcast is basically, so in good news, Accent Swiss Blockchain has recently opened their offices in Singapore, which is a huge leading hub when it comes to the Web3 technologies. So I wanted to get your view, and we're really excited about this growth. So I just want to know, as someone who's part of this technological shift, like how do you view the growth of blockchain in Singapore and in Southeast Asia specifically?
Yeah, good question. So I was living in 5 other countries before moving back to Singapore, and I moved back to Singapore because I thought this was a fantastic place for blockchain, for new tech, for emerging tech. Government is very open to new tech. They believe in blockchain as a technology very much, and they've been running like government level experiments. They're embracing AI. They're embracing anything emerging just to help grow the knowledge base of Singapore. So that's fantastic. When it comes to Southeast Asia as well, if you look at this year, for example, Token 2049 was hugely attended. In fact, it was probably the biggest. Yeah, it's the biggest conference that's attended by the world in blockchain this year. There's also DevCon that's happening in Bangkok, and that's also a big push. Bangkok, Singapore, even Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, it's also doing very well. They're pushing out a lot of developers, a lot of protocols. Government is supportive, not in terms of launching full scope or full plan regulations yet, because everyone's still figuring things out, but they're pushing things forward very much. In fact, Hong Kong is not really Southeast Asia, but Hong Kong also has an economic zone that I think it's called Cyberport, and they're doing a lot of crypto experiments as well. So I'm very, very hopeful for Southeast Asia and Asia in general, because things are moving so much. In fact, Dubai, Saudi, huge movements going on over there.
It's
I'm
going
super
on.
excited about where Asia is going to be. And everyone is coming to Asia. The amount of investments pouring into Asia, it's like, hey, follow where the money is. And if the money says Asia is the place to be, yeah, I think it's the place to be.
Yeah, it is so
That's
exciting.
one side of it where the money is. But one thing that really interests me about Asia, especially when I've visited like Singapore, Shanghai, is that the number of people that are really working hard to learn the core sciences of this technology. Like, if I come to Singapore, I see more people talking about blockchain as an infrastructure technology than just like from an investment side of like, are you investing in crypto? Like, I don't get this question so often in blockchains. Like, what are you building in the blockchain sector? Like, the dynamics of the question change. And I think that's quite interesting, the shift. And I think this is why it made like Singapore one of the countries that maybe moved faster, because they focused more on building applications with intrinsic value rather than just focusing on like crypto investments.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I think I just add one more point, which is in Singapore, there's a lot of big companies as well, like Web2 companies, a lot of banks. They have their headquarters in Singapore to run a lot of sandbox to experiment with digital assets. So it's not just the VCs or the startups doing it, even big companies are doing it. And other parts of Southeast Asia, like Philippines and Vietnam, you have genuine users interested to go into Web3. And based on a lot of the startups that we work with and I speak to, they have a much higher retention and much higher interest to use crypto as opposed to like Latam and Africa. So there is a growing middle class there. There are people from startups all the way to big banks and big companies interested to move the technology forward. So super excited about it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very exciting
It
news.
is so exciting.
Yeah.
So just to wrap up here, is there something you want to keep or say to our listeners while they listen to this podcast or venture into this space? Is there something that you just want to tell them and leave with them as they listen to the end of this podcast?
Very good question. I would say focus on building robust economies. Focus on using the technology for good. The tech is neutral and it can be used for bad. And being in the space for 7 years, I've seen it used for a lot of bad stuff. But I would really suggest you to build things for good, because the world tomorrow is really dependent on all the good that we do right now. And I'm here to help. So if anyone has any questions, and if you can share what is the biggest challenge you're facing when it comes to tokens, just ping me. And I'm available on Twitter and LinkedIn under Lisa JYTAN. And happy to hear your thoughts and happy to help wherever I can.
Awesome.
Thank you
Lisa.
so much. Thank you, Lisa,
It was
for
really-
offering such a great help for listeners.
Yeah.
I honestly would advise people to read your book. I've read it myself, and it was a great book to understand the economics of decentralized or distributed network. It gives you a really different perspective on how to see things when you come and learn blockchain, and that it goes further than just being in crypto or just Bitcoin or Ether or just making money from speculations.
Yeah, honestly. Thank you so much for your time. It's been quite inspiring to read your work and to learn more from you. And I'm honestly so honored to have you here. It was a very exciting chat. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mazel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. I really
Thank you
appreciate
so
this.
much, Lisa.